Welcome back to Bayou Time. I'm Jacob DeGate, and I'm now joined by people from the CASA of Terrebonne. We have Christine Aucoin, who is the Executive Director, and we have Salma Reyes, who is the Training and Outreach Coordinator of CASA in Terrebonne. Thank you very much for joining us. Christine, let me start off with you, being the Executive Director. Can you tell us when you first got involved with CASA and what led you in that direction?
First of all, thank you so much
You're welcome.
for having us on. My journey with CASA started back in 2016 when I decided to become a volunteer. And so I went through the training and I was sworn in as a volunteer. And within that year, I took 2 different cases. I worked on 2 different cases, and then a position became available on staff. And so I was hired on as an office manager, and then worked my way to trainer, and then worked my way to executive director. So I've kind of stepping stone all the way up over the last 4 or 5 years. I've been executive director since March of last year. So.
Wonderful. And Salma, let me get your history with CASA. When did it start?
I moved to Louisiana back in 2011, and I applied for a supervising position and was hired on. And after about a year and a half, I left, but then I came back a year and a half later, and I was an advocate supervisor up until March of last year, and then I became the outreach and training coordinator.
Okay. All right, Christine, let me ask you, I guess, for the people out there that don't know what CASA actually stands for or what it does, can you give a brief overview of that?
So CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate, and these advocates are the volunteers that we're talking about training. So these volunteers are trained, and what we do as a staff is we train them, we support them as they advocate for these children in foster care.
Okay, and what kind of, I guess, benefits do the children receive from having, an advocate for them?
So the benefits, they have national surveys out. We are under the National CASA umbrella, and so we follow their standards, and they have statistics out that if a foster child has a CASA volunteer, they're more likely to receive more services, they're more likely to spend less time in foster care, and they're more likely to not come into foster care again. And so we advocate for the whole child, the needs of the whole child, whether it's medical, educational, emotional, and make sure those needs are being met while they're in state's custody.
Okay, and for I guess the children themselves, how are they, I guess, determined who needs that CASA, who needs that advocate, or how is that decided?
All children in foster care need a CASA volunteer.
Okay.
At this moment, we have 158 children who are waiting for a CASA to be assigned to them. We have about 46 active volunteers at the moment, and they have been assigned. Where we continuously recruit so that every child has a volunteer assigned to them.
Okay, so what you're telling me is y'all desperately need volunteers out there for people to step up and come contribute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what do the children receive from the CASA volunteers? Like, how do they get to know each other, and how does that process work?
Well, the process is, so when a volunteer is sworn in, we have, if you go to our back office, we have this big board full of cards, and that's our waiting list. And so they're able to choose the case that they want to advocate for. And so once they choose that case, we assign them a supervisor, and that supervisor is with them every step of the way. We don't just throw them out to the wolves. And so they're able to meet with the child. They're required to meet with the child at least once a month, and you can actually meet more than once a month. You visit foster parents, you accompany them to court along with your supervisor, and so every piece of that case that advocate is able to follow them. If they have educational needs, they're able to meet with the teacher. If they need an IEP, if they need that upgraded or whatever from year to year, are those educational needs being met if they're school age? Even early steps if they're having issues, because a lot of the problem we're having in this community, as around the nation, is drug-exposed infants that are coming into care because of misuse of drugs by the parents, by the mother. And so those issues of health issues don't come up until maybe they're 2, 3, or 4 years old, when they're starting. Those cognitive issues don't come up, and so the advocate is there to make sure that those needs are being addressed, those type of things. Or even something as simple as the immunizations, being up to date on immunizations and such. Just like you would your own child or your grandchild. Are those needs, those basic needs that a parent should be taking care of, is that caregiver taking care of it?
Okay, do they report directly to that caregiver, or do they just make their report at court? How does that go?
Advocate supervisors take in the information, and then it's put into our system. And whenever the case has to go to court, that's where the advocate will present that to the courts and to all the parties who are involved. However, if there is a need that needs to be addressed, they don't wait for a court to come around. Those are usually worked out with DCFS. And of course, when that is not taken care of, then it is voiced in court as well.
Yeah, they have a caseworker, a DCFS caseworker, that the advocate is working closely with, because caseworkers are assigned to each of these foster children also.
How there's a desperate need for more volunteers, because they have several children in foster care that could use, I guess, more advocates on their behalf. Can you tell us, is there a typical person out there that are CASA volunteers, or is it more from a little bit of everybody, a diverse accommodations of CASA volunteers?
So our volunteers range from age to 20. We just had one that was 90-something that finally
Wow.
took her last case. And so it runs the gamut in age, in qualifications as far as education. You don't have to have any training besides the training that we provide, and then the ongoing training once you are sworn in. So they come from all walks of life. So we have teachers, we have a helicopter pilot, we have business owners, we have people who are in the workforce full-time, we have people that are retired, students. So it doesn't really matter. What we're looking for is somebody that has a heart for children and just wanting to be there as a responsible, caring adult in their lives.
Okay, and I think we have a slide that has some qualifications on it. If we can pull that up real quick. It's going to be next, that one, 21 or older. That's what I was looking for. And you started off by just submitting an application, is that right?
Correct.
And when you sign up, I see that you have to, you commit to 2 years at least. Is that typical time that people serve as a CASA volunteer, or do they, once they start, do they usually, I guess, go for longer than that?
I think the only reason we have that there is just to kind of give them an idea of how long maybe a normal case would take to go through the system. And we tell the volunteers whenever we train them that once you are assigned to a child, you don't want to come off of that case. You don't want to give that child another disappointment in their life. So, it may be longer. It may be less time. I know I had 2 cases within 1 year, and both of them ended up closing. So it was like 6 or 8 months for 6 months for each one of them. But it just all depends.
And does, I guess, does the the advocate in once the person's returned back to their natural family, or they either, I guess, turn 18? Is that how it works?
Well, there's different ways a case can end. One can be reunification with the parents. Have they done all their case plan, all that's required of them? We work toward reunification. We love seeing reunification of with these parents. Another way a case can close is an adoption. And so once that adoption is closed, then the case is closed. And like you mentioned, if they age out of the system, we do have extended foster care, but CASA isn't on anybody after 18 years old. Although a volunteer will remain in that child's life if they've been on that case for a good amount of time. We have volunteers that follow their kids into adulthood. So it doesn't end whenever the case ends necessarily.
Okay. Can you tell me, I guess, how much time or CASA volunteers, how much time do they put in, or can they put in more time than what is required too?
CASA volunteers are required to visit their children once a month. Of course, we encourage that they visit them more often, just to build that relationship. Every case is going to be a little bit different because it's going to depend on the age of the child, what their needs are, how complicated the case may be. On average, our volunteers will say they spend about 6 to 8 hours throughout the month. So what we say is if you can binge watch a Netflix series, then you can definitely be a CASA volunteer. And so as a CASA volunteer, you pretty much coordinate your schedule with the foster parents to see when you're able to see that child.
Okay, and what are the steps that one needs to take to becoming a CASA volunteer?
Well, the first thing is to submit an application, and then from there we will meet and go.
And I see on the slide you can apply online.
Yes.
That's where the application process would be?
You would go to our website, www.casaofterrebonne.org, and there is the application section. Fill that out. That comes directly to me, and we get, started with paperwork and, just kind of giving you an overview of what a CASA is and the requirements.
Okay. And then what are the training aspects of becoming the CASA? What kind of training does one need to take?
We have a 5-week, 6-week training that our volunteers go through, and we call it our flex training because we meet in person, but we also have online work. So within 6 weeks, you can complete the course, and of course there is the background checks that we have to comply with, and as soon as those have cleared, definitely they're on their way to being sworn in by the courts.
Okay, and then I think we have some contact information on how people can get in touch with you if they're looking for any more information, or if they're looking, again, to submit an application. That would be the website there at the bottom.
Correct.
Okay, and of course the need for more volunteers certainly isn't going away, so we encourage all the people out there with some time and a love for children to get involved, and that is certainly a way that you can get involved to make a real difference in somebody's life. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. We're about out of time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more right here on HTV.